Can you tell me, can the historical genetics and evolution of tactile interfaces predict the future of haptics, or maybe can it help us to learn from the mistakes? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so prediction is tough, right?
Right, yeah.
And there have been, anyone who gives a timeline for haptics technology will probably get it wrong. So I think that is, for me, it's really fascinating not to try to do prediction, but to try to look at prediction, to try to look at to try to learn from past predictions. For instance, one of my favorite examples of this is Howard Rheingold in his book Virtual Reality. He's writing about teledildonics. He's writing about like cyber sex, remote sex technologies in 1990. And he says that basically, like in 30 years, we may all have these, like he calls them portable telediddlers that we carry around with us, and basically like remote sex has become normalized. And so Rheingold, like he gave a date, right? He said 30 years out. And
he was wrong.
He was wrong, but he wasn't entirely wrong, right? So it's not that it's not been ubiquitously deployed, but I would say of all the areas of haptics research, and haptics researchers like to treat that area of haptics like at a little bit of arm's length, right? But I would say that that's one area where we've seen like the successful commercialization of haptics technologies is in the area of cyber sex. It's not ubiquitous, but it's more ubiquitous than like haptic gloves are, for instance, for sure, right? So Rheingold, the point is Rheingold gave a date, and we can look back and say like, oh, he got this right, he got this wrong. But I think it's interesting. What's more instructive is to try to learn from those predictions, right? To try to learn from what people were thinking when they made a prediction, to try to learn where they might have gone wrong. So, if we look back at the discourse around haptics, the marketing discourse around haptics from the late 1990s, when Logitech is selling force feedback, little vibrating computer mice, early 2000s. Microsoft is partnering with Immersion and developing like force feedback racing steering wheels. The rhetoric, the description of what those technologies were going to do, how they were going to transform gaming, is almost word for word the same as you find in marketing language for contemporary haptic vests, haptic gloves, right? So was that necessarily the best pitch? Did they set themselves up for failure by overpromising? I sort of think that one of the problems that the industry has had for a long time is it has overpromised, right? It's ratcheted the rhetoric up so high that the products it releases can't possibly deliver on that, deliver on those promises. It can't possibly cash the check that was written around it, because they've said that it's going to do so much, right?
Yeah, but maybe they also drive the interest, right? And motivation for further research or some development. Might be not in a good direction, who knows? But, the money is brought to the industry anyway, so some part of it could be used for a good, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We can also look, seems like we can look back at a lot of those devices and see how they, how and why they fell short, or look at the way that people reacted to them, maybe the way that people used them in ways that the designers didn't necessarily intend to. And I'll just give a quick example here. So the Novent Falcon is one of my favorite historical examples of, haptics device successfully brought to market. You could go to Walmart or Best Buy and buy one off the shelf, right? They had them, pretty widely distributed in stores. Novent was asking people to be haptics evangelists. They were asking people basically to host like Tupperware parties for the Falcon, where you'd invite a bunch of your friends over and you would show them how the device worked. And that would generate this sort of grassroots groundswell of interest in the device and in haptics more generally. And you would end up with, this thing being widely deployed as a gaming controller. the device fails, like dramatically fails, right? Doesn't, the company folds, they're closing out the devices for like $50 at Best Buy. But what does it do? It puts very cheap haptic interfaces in the hands of a lot of people who then start playing and doing creative things with the technology, right? So it's failure, but it's also a generative failure that I think can be interesting to look back on and see where the interest clustered. Was the interest that emerged in the places that the designers and the marketers thought it would be, or did people do something creative and unexpected with technology again at the grassroots level? And I think that's kind of been missing from the history of haptics. We haven't quite seen that like tinkerer hacker level of interest in the technology, I think, until just the past like 5 or 10 years or so. But for the most part, it's been a very elite controlled field. In other words, like people working in university contexts, people working in industry contexts, not necessarily like on the ground users tinkering with the technology, trying to do something cool and interesting with it.
So you think that could be in a way like partially a future of haptic, right? These grassroots DIY communities, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically give haptics to people.
See what they do with it. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I think we can basically end on this note.